name is David Gardner. I'm the Executive Director of the North Carolina Center for Health and Wellness at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. And I want to welcome you to the live streams of the keynote addresses for the National Physical Education Institute for 2014 for Tuesday, July 29th. I hope you enjoy and will participate in all of the live stream broadcast.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome you and the rest of the audience that's currently looking at this live stream broadcast. We've gotten some great tweets from all around the world, from India, from the UK, from Singapore, from Mexico, from different states, from California, Texas, Alaska, and Hawaii, along with many states in the South, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, New York. New York's not in the South, but anyway, we'd like to bring greetings. Today it's my privilege, and it's a very, very special privilege. I met Joey about 3 years ago. Joey Feith is a blogger. He's a physical education blogger, and I had the opportunity to find his site. And when I saw it, I was just totally amazed. And I actually emailed him, and we talked about physical education and what needs to happen. Yesterday, George Graham talked about copy, C-O-P-P-E. And we want a lot of copycats. We want you to be copycats. We want you to demonstrate what's the best of the best in physical education. And I believe Joey and all of his other social media buddies, and all of his Twitter friends, and all of his hashtag PE chat, and hashtag PE geeks buddies will be the driving force for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So it's my privilege to introduce Joey Feith.
All right. Yes. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, how y'all doing today? Good. So I'm so happy to be here today and get the day started off. Today I'm going to be talking about the phys ed revolution. But before we get started here, I actually want to start today's keynote off with a bit of a story about a man named Rob. Now I want you to keep something in mind, please. Remember that I went to school to be a physical education teacher, not a poet. So bear with me as we go through this. Sound good? Okay. So Rob had a job in a city called Hob, where he worked at a tiny little school. And if you asked him, he'd say he taught gym, and that his job was pretty darn cool. See, Rob loved his career. He'd been at it for years, going into work every day after day. No need to lesson plan. Rob say, I'm the man. Dodgeball's the only game kids want to play. Poor little kid. See, Rob didn't assess. The standard stayed in his desk. Rob, well, he just teach from his gut. But after a while, his students would no longer smile, and Rob realized his teaching was in a rut. So there was no way about it. Rob needed professional development, so he went to a conference to learn stuff, but with so little time, and having spent his last dime, Rob realized that conferences weren't enough. So he went back online to see what he could find, and came across something called a blog. It was full of resources that he could use with his courses. It breathed new life into this old dog. Sorry, Rob. Now, most importantly, he discovered a community of teachers using something called Twitter. They were from near and far, and together they helped raise the bar with ideas so bright that they'd glitter. As Rob started to connect, these teachers helped him reflect on his teaching that had become such a dread. He was feeling inspired, his passion burning like fire, all thanks to a team called Feith. So Rob got to planning for the year that was coming, this time with some help from his online friends. He went through the outcomes and revamped his curriculum, truly looking at his career through a new lens. When the students came to be taught, they asked dodgeball. Rob said, "I think not. We have learning objectives that we must meet." His students jumped up and down, not a single one frowned. And all this because Rob learned how to tweet. And that's my story. Thank you. So, everybody, I am wildly excited to be here. My name is Joey Feith, and I am from the internet. Now, I guess that's not totally true. I'm actually from a beautiful place called Canada. Yeah, any Canadians here? But if you were to ask my lovely girlfriend right there, she'd tell you that I spend way more time online than I do repairing our igloo or tending to our geese. I'm just kidding. Our igloo melted in June. I want you to know that today I'm not here to tell. I'm not here to sell. Today, I am here to invite. I am here to invite you to a global revolution that is taking place within the field of physical education. Now, this isn't a revolution that involves a couple of teachers, or a dozen teachers, or 100 teachers. This is a true global revolution that involves tens of thousands of teachers from around the world. Tens of thousands of teachers who are actively taking steps to improve their practice through meaningful professional networking, sharing, and collaboration. And they are getting all these things done. They are getting these things done thanks to the help of social media. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're probably thinking, how about you go ahead and pump the brakes there, Canada? You're trying to tell us that social media platforms, the things we use to share pictures of our cats, or discover what kind of lattes our friends are drinking, you're trying to tell us that those same platforms can help us get the professional development that we need so that we can go on and be the best teachers we can be? I don't buy it. Now here's the thing. Today I'm not here to tell you that social media platforms can be used by teachers to improve their practice. I'm here to tell you that social media platforms are being used by teachers to improve their practice, and I want you to be a part of that. Now I know some of you are still a little skeptical about it, so what I'd like to do for this part of the keynote is that I actually like to share some stories from my friends. Innovative teachers from the online phys ed community who have inspired countless other teachers and have actively taken steps to be the best teachers they can be through meaningful professional development. And I want to start these stories off with, it's one of my favorite stories, and it's from two of my favorite teachers to follow online, Blue Jay Bridge from Manitoba, Canada, and Matt Pomeroy from Wisconsin. There we go, Wisconsin people in here? There we go, Patty. So Blue and Matt actually got connected on Twitter a couple of years ago. And after they connected, they started tweeting back and forth at each other, and they started trying to come up with ideas on how they could collaborate on some kind of resource. And through their discussion, what they discovered is that they were both using agility ladder drills in their teaching as part of their fitness unit. But they realized that the way that they were using these drills probably wasn't the most innovative way they could go about it. So they started talking and started pitching some ideas around, and eventually they came up with a really great idea and got to work. Now remember that Blue's in Manitoba and Matt's in Wisconsin. But because of all the amazing tools that we have online now, that doesn't matter anymore. You can collaborate with anyone, anywhere, at any time. And that's exactly what these two guys did. They started working on a document where they were creating different posters for agility ladder drills. Now these posters not only had illustrations of the drill, but they also involved a QR code. And the idea here is that their students could take a mobile device, open up a QR scanning app, scan that code, and that would automatically jump them to a video of the drill being demonstrated. And on top of that, with their teacher providing extra information and instructions for the drill, so the student felt fully prepared after having watched that video to go out and perform it. Now what this did is it gave their students a lot more independence in class, because now the students could work on a drill until they felt comfortable with it, and then go over to one of the posters, scan, and move on to the next drill. And for Matt and Blue, what happened is it gave them a lot more time to move around their classroom and assess their students and really work with those students who need that one-on-one time with their teacher. They were able to work with those students so that they can move on to the next level. Now, I want to start with this story because here's the thing. You know, Matt and Blue worked together on this resource, and there's over 50 posters within it. And they got teachers from around the world to help them out with it. They even got their students involved in the design part. And they could have easily taken this resource and just turn around and try to sell it to teachers. But it was social media that brought them together. It was the community that brought them together. So you know what they did instead of doing that? They turned right around and just shared that out for free. And I want to share that because that's what happens all the time within our community. People are working together, putting together great resources, and then turning right around and sharing it for free for everyone else. Because we're all helping each other try to raise the bar for phys ed. Now this was just a start for Blue and Matt. Blue Jay's gone on and done incredible things. He has such a quality physical education program full of innovative ideas. He's been featured in participation in CBC.ca, which is a Canadian news authority. And in 2013, he was actually nominated by the community as one of the top Twitter accounts to follow for phys ed teachers. And what's great, and this happens with many of us in the community, is that not only is he learning and he's growing as a teacher, but he wants to continue sharing, not only online, but offline as well. So he continues to present at the local, provincial, and national level to try and get these ideas out and try and get more people involved. As for Matt, Matt has continued to do excellent work as a phys ed teacher. His program is so innovative and so incredible that CNN actually did a feature on it earlier this year, which I think is really important for these types of programs. Matt has continued to be involved in different initiatives within our community. I'm going to talk a little bit about them before, but he's a real leader who's helped a lot of people get started and a lot of people feel inspired. One last thing, and I swear these guys aren't paying me to talk about them, but one last thing I want to say about these two is that they are full-time teachers, but they're also full-time dads. These guys are busy guys who have busy, busy lives, and they still find the time to share online and connect with teachers because they realize it's not only important for other teachers, but it's important for themselves so that they can continue to grow and never allow their teaching to become stagnant. So that was the first story I wanted to share today, Blue Jay Bridge and Matt Pomeroy. The second story is from one of my friends, Ash Casey, or as he goes on Twitter, Dr. Ash Casey. So Ash has a couple letters in front of his name because, well, that's what he does. He's an academic out in the UK. And Ash did something really incredible last year. See, him and some colleagues, they were working on a research study where they were going to be looking at girls' disengagement in physical education. And the idea is that they're going to put together a paper, and in this paper they want to include a narrative from a female student's point of view of why she was disengaged in her class. Now, Ash said that he could have written the narrative, but it probably wouldn't have come out as being very authentic. But he's very, very social media savvy. So he decided, why not use the power of social media to help us with this part? So what him and his colleagues did is that they went to Twitter and they searched for terms, I hate PE and I love PE. And what that brought them to were thousands and thousands of tweets from students all around the world talking about either their engagement or their disengagement in phys ed. Obviously not using those exact terms. But Ash and his colleagues went through all these thousands of tweets and eventually were able to narrow down to 340 tweets that met the criteria they were looking for. Female student, high school, disengaged in phys ed. Now from those 340 tweets, what they did is they took all of them and they compiled them together, and that's what they wrote the narrative with. See, now when you're reading that narrative, and this passed through ethics and everything because it's all in the public domain, now when you're reading that narrative, the language, the emotions you're reading are real, true emotions from a high school student because it's something that somebody shared publicly online. Now this narrative, Ash decided to turn around and blog about it. He wanted to share it, put it on the internet, and this is where he contacted me. See, because for the second part of the research, now that they had this narrative, they wanted to get teachers to kind of read the student's story and see what they would do to try and fix it, right? Try and get the student engaged, try to get them excited about physical education again. And that's where I came in. Through my website, I host a bi-monthly chat on Twitter, and it's kind of complicated to explain right here, but basically what it does is that we get teachers from around the world to discuss topics that we've decided that we want to discuss. And that's what we did with this narrative. We got teachers from all around the world, all different continents, to join in and start a discussion on how we could get the student engaged in physical education again, because that's so important. Now, everybody that was in the chat was part of the study, and we all agreed to it. And then what Ash and his team did is that they were able to go through all of those tweets and identify 3 main themes for solutions of how they would try and get the student engaged in phys ed again. And when it came time to writing that paper, what I think is incredible is that in that paper, they were then able to take all this information from Twitter and put it right in there. And I think this is a huge step for the way that research is being done. You talk about ways of trying to link what's going on in universities to what's happening in gyms, and try to bridge that gap between academics and practitioners. And Ash Casey gets this done. He gets this done on a daily basis through all the tweets he's sharing, and he has a weekly blog where he'll read these heavy academic research articles and translate them into teacher-friendly talk. So we're able to, it makes it more accessible, and we're able to use that information to try and continue to grow as educators. And that's why I want to talk about Ash. Not necessarily a practitioner, but still somebody who's using social media to take their practice to the next level. And that was story number 2. Story number 3 is from a really up-and-coming teacher within our community. Her name is Sarah Gitchier-Hartman, and she is a physical education teacher based out of St. Louis, Missouri. So earlier this summer, I asked Sarah if she'd be willing to write a blog post for my site. And she jumped right on it, and she wrote this incredibly honest and open blog post. In it, she revealed that for the first 6 years of her teaching, she would assess her students based off of 3 criteria, based off of effort, participation, and whether or not they were dressing out in class. Now here's the thing. Sarah, in her blog post, revealed that she was ashamed about the way she was going about grading her students, because she realized that the way she was grading her students weren't necessarily helping them in any way. It wasn't helping them get to the next level to where they need to be so they can go on and become physically literate individuals. And it wasn't until one of her colleagues lent her a book called How to Grade for Learning by Ken O'Connor, and Sarah started going through it, and she started realizing that a couple of things. She realized that she needed to start collecting evidence on where her students were at in their learning. And she came to realize that grades shouldn't be used as some kind of like extrinsic motivation system to get kids to comply to procedures and get kids moving in your class. Grades should be used as a system to get your kids to understand where they are at in their learning and what they need to do to get to the next level. And so this is how Sarah started adopting a standards-based grading system and standards-based instruction system in her teaching. And she was really excited about it. She was gonna, for every outcome she was gonna teach, the students would get a grade from 1 to 4. And that represented 4 different levels. And even though Sarah was super excited about this, when she started explaining to her students, she realized that her students were having a hard time kind of grasping the concept. They didn't necessarily understand what was the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 and a level 2 and a level 3. But Sarah was involved in the community, and she knew that she could go out on Twitter and try and connect with people who had adopted standards-based grading and instruction in their teaching, and see if they had any tips on how to explain it to her students. And that's how she came across something great, which is the cupcake analogy. So she was looking for standards-based grading, and this cupcake analogy. And I want to share this analogy with you because I think it's really cool. So here's how she explains her different levels for standard-based grades. If you're at level 1, it's like if you go into a cupcake shop and ask for a cupcake, and all they do is give you a wrapper. So it's nothing really, it's not a cupcake, it's empty inside. And what that means is that as a student, it means you're not at the level yet where you've really started to show that you've acquired different knowledge and that you're feeling comfortable with the concepts you're learning in class. So that's at level 1, and it's okay to be at level 1. Everybody starts at level 1 when they start something new, right? Now at level 2, you got that wrapper, you got a little bit of cake in it. So now you're showing that you've got some of that knowledge, and you've got some of those concepts, and you're able to start explaining them in your own terms. But let's be honest here. A wrapper and just a little bit of cake, that's not a real cupcake. At level 3, now you've got that wrapper, that cake, and you go put a little bit of icing on top. And now you're showing that you've acquired this knowledge, you've acquired these concepts, and you're able to apply them, you're able to use them in class in the different activities you're doing. And finally, at level 4, and this is the ultimate level, you got wrapper, cake, icing, and sprinkles on top. And that's just that little bit extra. That's you showing that you're able to go above and beyond what's expected of you in that class, in those outcomes that you're trying to reach. Now, Sarah explained this system to her students, and I'm totally intending this pun, they ate it up. And what I thought was pretty sweet, again, pun intended, was that Sarah's students would come see her at the end of class and say, "Miss, was I a sprinkle today?" And that's what Sarah's trying to do. She's trying to get all of her students to be sprinkles. And I just think this is a great story, this is a great example, because here you have a teacher who was able to recognize that she wasn't being the best teacher that she could be, and on her own actively take steps to go out and get the help she needed to go on to the next level and provide her students with the physical education that they need and deserve. So that was Sarah's story. Story number 4 involves two of my favorite Canadians, Andy Vasley and Naomi Hartle. And this story actually starts off with Andy. Now, I'm not gonna lie, and I know Andy's watching. I'm not gonna lie, Andy's my main man. He is an incredibly inspirational individual. And if any of you get a chance to connect with him, you really should. And he's just got all kinds of crazy ideas. And you know, a couple of years ago, he came up with this really good idea. He had this idea where he wanted to take teachers from around the world and group them together into teams. And these teams would be built around different themes. Themes like curriculum and planning, innovation and technology, assessment, instructional models, and even leadership and mentorship. So the idea here is that these teams would be grouped around these topics. They would talk about the topic, come up with ideas, go out into their teaching, put these ideas into action, and then come back as a group and reflect on how that all worked out for them. And he called this initiative, he called it PEPLIC, or PPLC, which stands for Physical Education Professional Learning Community. Now, of these teachers that Andy was recruiting to be a part of this initiative, one of those teachers was a young teacher from Saskatchewan, Naomi Hartle, who I also know is watching at home right now. She tweeted at me before I started. Now, Naomi is a young teacher who has a ton of drive and really wanted to be the best teacher that she could be. And that's why she joined the PEPLIC initiative. And early on, she started connecting and building her network with teachers from all around the world. Like, teachers have been teaching for a couple of months, teachers have been teaching for several years, researchers, academics, all kinds of people. And she was learning and growing as a teacher every time she was part of these discussions. But the thing is that not only was Naomi developing her teaching skills, she was also developing her leadership skills. So much so that she eventually became a learning leader for the technology and innovation team for North America. Now, that was just a start for her. She continued to apply her ideas in her teaching, provide excellent physical education for her students, and go on and share that information for other people. I would say that Naomi is one of the leading leaders for Google Apps in physical education. And if any of you have never used Google Apps for education, you need to see some of the stuff that she's doing because it's incredible. On top of that, Naomi actually joined two other great teachers, Adam Howell from Oregon and Matt Pomeroy, who I mentioned earlier, and together they formed a team over at Feith, which is a great blog where you can find a lot of information about technology and physical education, but also just really great reflections on what it means to be an excellent pedagogue. Now, Naomi, like I said earlier, with all these other teachers, she continues to share at her local, at her school level, at the provincial level, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see her at the national level next year. As for Andy, Andy continues his incredible work with his students. You talk about a teacher who truly cares about what he does and truly cares about his journey towards becoming the teacher he wants to be. He wants to continue helping teachers find inspiration through different, linking them to research, linking them to ideas, or just linking them to all kinds of different inspiring content that can help them become better teachers. He does this not only through PEPLIC, but also through his incredible blog at pyppewithandy.com. Again, he blogs almost on a daily basis where he's going through and he's just reflecting about everything that's happening in his teaching. You'd be hard-pressed to find a teacher online who hasn't been inspired by Andy at some point. And that's Andy and Naomi, two teachers that I wanted to share with you because two teachers that found each other online and were able to help each other raise the bar for themselves and for countless others. Now, the last story I'm going to share here actually involves myself and my great friend Nathan Horn. So I'm from Montreal up in Canada. Nathan currently teaches out in Singapore. And if you look at a map, Montreal and Singapore are pretty far apart. And the chance of me actually getting to meet Nathan in real life would have been pretty difficult. But luckily, like so many other teachers, we found each other through Twitter. And what really brought us together was our shared interest in the application of technology in physical education. See, Nathan and I would have these amazing conversations where we would go back and forth, and every time we'd have a conversation, we just felt so pumped about teaching afterwards. We were so excited to get back into our gym and just start applying some of these ideas. And at one point, I had this idea. I decided, like, Nathan, why don't we take all these things that we're sharing, all these things that we're talking about, these conversations we're having that are leaving us so inspired, and why don't we record them? Why don't we record them and then share them in some kind of podcast format? Because maybe these conversations that are leaving us feeling inspired can help other teachers feel inspired as well. And that's really how the Phys Ed podcast came to be. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the Phys Ed podcast is a podcast that we do on an extremely irregular schedule. It's not like a weekly or monthly thing, it's just a weird schedule. But the reason is that Nathan and I want to wait until we're really pumped up to talk about things, to talk and have that like high level conversation. And when we started this off, we thought that it'd be just a great way to kind of share our ideas with teachers from around the world. But what we weren't expecting is that we weren't expecting teachers then to come back and start sharing all of their ideas with us too. People would hear something in the podcast and automatically would start this awesome conversation on Twitter or Facebook or wherever it is that we were connecting. And it was helping Nathan and I accelerate the rate at which we were able to come up with new ideas and change our old ideas and start applying that in our teaching. And really the podcast, as much as we like to think that we do it for others, it's helped us become the best teachers that we can be. Well, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working towards it. So that was Nathan and I. Nathan's just a great teacher. He has a blog, ifized.com, and you really need to check his stuff out. Now here's the thing. I could go on all day sharing stories from the different leaders and the different teachers within our phys ed community. But I'm not here to talk to you about their stories. I'm here to try and encourage you to start writing yours. See, you might not believe this, but this network, this revolution of ours, this what we call our team phys ed, we need you. And I mean, we need all of you. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I feel like sometimes like I'm pushing Twitter on people and everything, but we need as many teachers to get online and start sharing. Now, I know some of you are a little concerned, because you might feel that you don't have a full grasp on how to use these different social media platforms. Well, I'm telling you right now that if you get involved online, you are gonna start connecting with teachers from around the world, teachers that you've never met before from places you've maybe never even heard about before, who are going to jump in and want to help you get started. And number one on that list is this guy right here. Tomorrow, I'm giving a session on Twitter 101. So really just the basics of Twitter, how to set up a successful profile and how to start connecting. But this has been an incredible institute. Like, it's so hard to try and decide which session I want to go to or which session we can attend. So if you're not able to attend that session tomorrow, I want you to know that I put all that information up on my site, so thephysicaleducator.com. If you go to thephysicaleducator.com/recruit, that will jump you right over to my presentation, along with a ton of annotations. So even if I'm not there with you, you can go ahead and go through and get yourself set up. Because I really, really want to help you get online. And I know how intimidating it can be when you're first getting started. Now, some of you might already be online. And this is actually something I hear a lot of. A lot of people are already online, they have their Twitter accounts, and tell me, Joey, I'm a lurker. Which means that they're reading all these tweets, but they're never really jumping in or starting any conversations. And when I ask teachers why, they say, it's like, I just feel that, like, my experience, I don't know how much value I would actually bring to the conversation. Well, I want you to know something. I want to make this very clear. Whether if you have 30 seconds of teaching experience, or if you have 30 years of teaching experience, that experience gives you something very, very special. What it gives you is a unique perspective. And we need as many unique perspectives as possible within our community. See, as a community, we're trying to take on these massive problems. Problems that have been plaguing our profession for years. Things like stereotypes, bad teaching practices, really everything that when you tell someone that you teach physical education, they'll roll their eyes and kind of laugh it off. And we're trying to take on these problems, and we think that we're covering as many angles as we can. And the community is trying to see every angle, but sometimes there's angles that we're missing. And those little angles that we're missing, that could be the key to finding these solutions to these problems. And that angle might be something that I can't see, but you, with your unique perspective, that might be an angle that you're seeing. And that's why it's so important you join us. Your ideas, your opinions, your experience, you never know how these things are going to help inspire and motivate other teachers. And that's why it's so important you just get online and you start becoming a part of this community. We need you, and I'm not joking around here. We absolutely, absolutely need you. We need you because there's still way too many roll out the ball programs out there. And you and I both know that we can no longer afford to rob our students of the physical education that they need and deserve. We need you because we're trying to take the bar, we're trying to raise that bar to heights that we don't even know that exist yet. And we need you to help us do that. And we need you so that once and for all, we can finally put the ed back in phys ed. Now here's the thing. If you want to be a part of this revolution, I want you to know something. I want you to know that there are no sign-up forms. There are no monthly membership fees. There are no easy installments of $29.99. If you want to be a part of this revolution, all you have to do is get online and start sharing. And I really hope you do. Thank you all so much for coming out this morning. I hope to see you all online. Hey. Is that okay?
Thanks.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
A long time ago, there was an individual, his name is Ambrose Brazelton. And when Mac and Jim Rich and I and others would sit down and chat, he would pick out one or two individuals that he had kind of pointed out as being possible new future leaders. And he would always say, there is hope. There is hope. Oh. Thank you, Joey. There is hope.